While we were on a family trip to Hawaii, my sister viciously pushed my daughter into the mud and sneered, "Oh look, now you're resembling your mother, ugly women belong in the dirt." Her spoiled kids started throwing more mud while chanting, "Dirty girl. Dirty girl." Everyone stood there laughing hysterically at my child's humiliation. I stayed perfectly quiet, gently cleaned up my traumatized daughter, and later that night secretly canceled everything I had booked and paid for. Now they're calling nonstop from the airport saying, "We are sorry. We miss your daughter." I replied. I never thought I'd be the type of person to plan revenge, but my sister Daniela crossed a line that changed everything. What happened in Hawaii wasn't just cruel, it was unforgivable. And the way I handled it? Well, let me tell you the whole story. It started 3 months ago when I decided to organize a family reunion in Hawaii for July, peak tourist season, but worth it for the experience. My husband Bryce and I had been doing well financially, his tech startup had taken off, and I'd recently gotten a promotion at my Bryce eating firm. We thought it would be wonderful to bring everyone together, my parents, my younger sister Daniela with her husband Quentin and their twin boys Easton and Riker, and of course our 7-year-old daughter Nora. I spent those 3 months planning everything meticulously. I booked a beautiful beachfront resort in Maui with a 3-bedroom family suite for my parents, Daniela's family, and the kids, plus a separate ocean view room for Bryce, Nora, and me. I arranged snorkeling trips, luau's, helicopter tours, spa treatments for the adults, and special kids activities. The total cost came to nearly $30,000, but I was happy to do it. Family is everything, right? Nora was beyond excited. She'd been counting down the days, practicing her swimming, and had even learned a few Hawaiian words from YouTube videos. My sweet girl has always been a bit sensitive about her appearance. She inherited my curly red hair and freckles, which some kids at school had teased her about. But she was so thrilled about the trip that her confidence was soaring. Daniela, on the other hand, had been making snide comments from the moment I announced the trip. "Must be nice to show off your money," she'd said during our family dinner when I first brought it up. "Some of us can't afford to throw around cash like that." I tried to brush it off. Daniela had always been competitive, even though she was 2 years younger than me. She was the sister who got straight A's while I struggled with dyslexia. She was the one who got into Stanford while I went to community college first. But I'd worked hard to build my life, and I thought she'd be happy for me. The trip was planned for a full week, Saturday to Saturday. The first 3 days went smoothly enough. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. The resort was stunning, palm trees swaying in the ocean breeze, crystal clear water, and the most beautiful sunsets I'd ever seen. Nora was having the time of her life, building sandcastles and collecting shells. But I started noticing things. Daniela's boys, Easton and Riker, were 8 years old and had always been a handful, but they seemed particularly mean-spirited toward Nora. They'd knock down her sandcastles accidentally, steal her beach toys, and make faces at her when the adults weren't looking. When I tried to address it with Daniela, she'd just shrug and say, "Boys will be boys." My parents, bless them, were in their 70s and just happy to be somewhere warm. They spent most of their time napping by the pool or reading. Quentin, Daniela's husband, was constantly on his phone dealing with work calls. So it was mostly me trying to manage the kids and make sure everyone was having a good time. The incident happened on Tuesday, our 4th day. We'd planned a nature hike to see some waterfalls. The trail was beautiful but muddy from recent rains. Nora was walking ahead of us, carefully navigating the slippery path in her new hiking boots. She was being so careful, pointing out interesting plants and birds to anyone who would listen. That's when Daniela's mask completely slipped. Nora had paused to look at a colorful bird in a tree, and Daniela came up behind her. Without warning, she placed both hands on Nora's back and shoved her hard. My daughter went flying forward, landing face first in a particularly deep and muddy puddle. Nora came up sputtering, covered head to toe in thick, brown mud. She was crying, more from shock and humiliation than pain. The mud was in her hair, her mouth, her eyes. Her new hiking outfit was completely ruined. But Daniela wasn't done. She stood there with this cruel smile and said, in the sweetest voice possible, "Oh look, now you're resembling your mother, ugly women belong in the dirt." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The words hung in the air like poison. Easton and Riker immediately started laughing and pointing. Then they began scooping up handfuls of mud and throwing them at Nora while chanting, "Dirty girl. Dirty girl. Dirty girl." And here's the part that still makes my blood boil, everyone else started laughing too. Quentin was chuckling and shaking his head like it was just harmless fun. My parents were giggling, saying something about kids being kids. Even Bryce was smiling, though he at least had the decency to look uncomfortable when he saw my face. Nora was sobbing now, trying to wipe the mud from her eyes. She looked around at all the adults, the people who were supposed to protect her, and saw them laughing at her humiliation. The betrayal in her eyes broke my heart. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Daniela by her perfectly styled hair and push her into that mud. I wanted to demand that everyone stop laughing at my child. But something inside me went completely cold and calculating instead. I walked over to Nora, knelt down in the mud myself, and gently started cleaning her face with my water bottle and the clean towel from my backpack. I didn't say a word to anyone else. I just focused on my daughter, whispering soft reassurances that everything was okay. "Am I really ugly, Mommy?" Nora whispered to me, so quietly that only I could hear. "You are the most beautiful girl in the world," I whispered back, and I meant every word. Some people are just mean because they're unhappy inside. I helped Nora to her feet and announced that we were heading back to the resort. I said she needed a shower and some dry clothes. Daniela made some comment about the hike being ruined, but I ignored her completely. That afternoon, while Nora napped after her traumatic experience, I sat on our balcony with my laptop and started making calls. I was calm, methodical, and absolutely determined. First, I called the resort and explained there had been a family emergency requiring several rooms to be vacated by Thursday morning, still within the 48-hour cancellation window for their premium package. The family suite cancellation would result in partial charges, but I was prepared for that. Next, I systematically canceled the activities I'd booked for Friday and Saturday: the snorkeling trip, the helicopter tour, the spa appointments, the luau dinner. Since these were still more than 48 hours away, I could cancel most without penalty. Then I called the airline. Their policy allowed flight changes up to 24 hours before departure for a fee. I moved everyone except Bryce, Nora, and myself to a flight departing Thursday evening, paying the substantial change fees without hesitation. I even called the car rental company and canceled the van I'd rented for the group, keeping only our compact car. By evening, I had systematically shortened everyone's trip by 2 days and removed all the activities I'd planned and paid for. They'd wake up Wednesday morning to find themselves checking out Thursday with nothing planned and no way to extend their stay during peak July season. The best part? None of it could be traced back to me until it was too late. I'd simply exercised my right to cancel services I'd purchased. That night at dinner, I acted completely normal. I chatted about our plans for the next day, asked about everyone's favorite parts of the trip so far, and smiled at all the right moments. Nora was still subdued from the day's events, but she perked up a bit during dinner. Daniela was back to her usual self, making little bigs about Nora being clumsy and needing to toughen up. Every comment made my resolve stronger. The next morning, Wednesday, I woke up early and took Nora down to the beach for a private sunrise walk. We collected shells and talked about the pretty colors in the sky. I wanted to give her some peaceful memories before the chaos began. Around 8 a.m., the first call came. It was Quentin. "Alyssa, there's some kind of mistake," he said, sounding confused. "The front desk is saying we need to check out tomorrow morning, but we're not supposed to leave until Saturday." "That's strange," I said innocently. "Have you talked to Daniela about it?" "She's dealing with the boys. They're having meltdowns because the kids' club activities were cancelled. Something about a system error." I made sympathetic noises and suggested he work it out with the hotel directly. An hour later, Daniela called, her voice tight with stress. "Alyssa, there's something seriously wrong. They're saying we have to check out tomorrow, and most of our weekend activities have been cancelled. Something about changes to the booking." "Oh no," I said, adding just the right amount of concern to my voice. "That sounds terrible. Have you tried calling the booking company?" By 10 a.m., panic was setting in for them. The hotel confirmed they needed to vacate by Thursday morning. The weekend activities were cancelled. When they tried to extend their stay, they were told the resort was fully booked through the summer, typical for July in Maui. Quentin called back, his voice strained. "Alyssa, we need your help. Something's gone wrong with all our reservations. Can you call the travel agent you used? Maybe they can sort this out." "I didn't use a travel agent," I said honestly. "I booked everything myself online." There was a pause. "Can you help us rebook? We don't know what to do." "I'm sorry, but I'm not really comfortable putting that much money on my credit cards again," I said. "Maybe you can call around and find something?" By Thursday morning, they were getting desperate. They had to check out as scheduled, their weekend plans were gone, and they discovered their return flights had been moved to that evening. During peak tourist season, rebooking was going to cost them a fortune, if they could find anything at all. That's when Daniela made the mistake of trying to manipulate me through Nora. She found us by the pool and sat down next to my daughter with a fake smile plastered on her face. "Nora, sweetie," she said in a syrupy voice, "Aunt Daniela is having a really hard day. Do you think you could ask your mommy to help us? We might have to fly home today if we can't find a place to stay." Nora looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes. "Mommy, can we help them?" Before I could answer, Daniela leaned closer to Nora and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "I'm sorry about yesterday, sweetheart. Sometimes adults do silly things when they're tired. Silly things. She called traumatizing my daughter silly things. I think you all should probably head home, I said evenly. It sounds like nothing's working out. Daniela's mask slipped again. You can't be serious. We can't just leave. We haven't even been to the luau yet. I'm sure you'll figure something out, I said, not looking up from my book. By 3 p.m., they were at the airport trying to understand why their flights had been changed. The gate agent explained that someone with booking authority had modified their reservation, moving them to an earlier departure. Daniela called me, screaming this time. What did you do? I have no idea what you're talking about, I said calmly. Don't lie to me. I know you did this somehow. Daniela, you're being hysterical. Maybe you should take a moment to calm down. My children are crying in an airport. We have no hotel, no flights, and no money to fix this. That sounds really stressful, I said with genuine sympathy in my voice. I hope you figure it out. She hung up on me. For the next several hours, I received increasingly frantic calls from various family members. My parents were confused and upset. Quentin was angry and demanding I fix this mess. The boys were apparently having complete meltdowns in the airport. But Daniela was the most persistent. She called every 30 minutes, alternating between rage and desperate pleading. Finally, around 6 p.m. Hawaii time, she called one last time. Her voice was broken, exhausted. Alyssa, please. I'm begging you. The boys are exhausted. My parents are too old for this stress. We're sorry, okay? We're sorry about everything. Please, just help us figure out how to extend our stay or find somewhere else. We miss Nora. We miss you. We just want to make this right. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment when my sister, who had humiliated my child in front of our entire family, was finally ready to face consequences. Daniela, I said, my voice calm and clear, I want you to think very carefully about what you're asking me to do. I'm asking you to help your family. No, you're asking me to reward the woman who pushed my 7-year-old daughter into the mud and told her that ugly women belong in the dirt. You're asking me to bail out the people who stood there laughing while my child was humiliated and traumatized. There was silence on the other end. You're asking me to pretend that what happened yesterday was okay. That my daughter's tears don't matter. That her feelings don't matter. That she should just accept being treated like garbage by the people who are supposed to love her. It wasn't that bad. Stop. My voice was sharp now. Don't you dare minimize what you did. I watched my daughter ask me if she was really ugly because of what you said to her. I held her while she cried herself to sleep because her own family laughed at her pain. Daniela was crying now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. Yes, you did mean it. You've always been jealous of me, and when that wasn't enough, you decided to take it out on my child. My innocent, sweet, 7-year-old child. Please, Alyssa. I'll do anything. I'll apologize to Nora. I'll make it right. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and final. You're going to figure out your own way home. You're going to pay for your own hotels, your own flights, your own mistakes. And when you get home, you're going to think long and hard about the kind of person you want to be. But the boys, your boys learned yesterday that it's okay to hurt people smaller than them because the adults in their lives think it's funny. Maybe this will teach them a different lesson. Mom and Dad stood there and laughed while their granddaughter was bullied. They're adults. They can handle the consequences of their choices. There was a long pause. When Daniela spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I really am sorry. I know you are, I said. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. Sorry doesn't take away Nora's tears. Sorry doesn't make me forget the look on her face when she realized her own family thought her pain was entertainment. So that's it? You're just going to abandon us here? I'm not abandoning you. I'm letting you take responsibility for your actions. There's a difference. I hung up the phone and turned it off. Bryce found me on the balcony an hour later. He'd been quiet all day, processing everything that had happened. They figured it out, didn't they? He asked, sitting down beside me. I nodded. Daniela knows it was me. Are you okay with this? I thought about it for a moment. Yesterday, I watched our daughter get pushed into the mud and humiliated by people who are supposed to love her. I watched her ask me if she was ugly. I watched her learn that sometimes people will hurt you just because they can. Bryce was quiet. Today, I taught her a different lesson. I taught her that actions have consequences. That people who hurt you don't get to keep enjoying the benefits of your kindness. That she is worth protecting, even when it's hard. She doesn't know what you did. She doesn't need to know. She just needs to know that someone was willing to stand up for her when it mattered. The next morning, Nora and I had breakfast on the beach while Bryce packed our things. We were flying home a day early, as planned. "Mommy," Nora said, building a small sandcastle with her hands, "where is everyone?" "They had to go home early, sweetheart. Sometimes plans change." She nodded, accepting this easily the way children do. "I'm sad they left." "I know, baby. But you know what? We still have each other, and we still have this beautiful beach." She smiled then, the first real smile I'd seen from her since the incident. "Can we come back someday? Just us?" "Absolutely," I promised. "Just us." But before we could fully enjoy our peaceful morning, my phone started buzzing again. I'd made the mistake of turning it back on to check our flight status. The calls came in waves, first Quentin, then my mom, then Daniela again, then my dad. Each voicemail was more desperate than the last. I finally listened to one from my mother, and her voice broke my heart. She sounded confused and scared, not understanding why their hotel room was suddenly unavailable or why they couldn't get on their flight home. "Alyssa, honey, I don't understand what's happening," she said, her voice shaky. "The hotel people are being so mean to us, and Daniela is crying, and the boys are having such a hard time. Can you please call me back? I just want to come home." For a moment, I wavered. These were my parents, the people who had raised me, who had been there for school plays and graduation and my wedding. They were in their 70s, and this was supposed to be a relaxing vacation for them. But then I remembered them laughing. I remembered my father chuckling and saying kids will be kids while Nora sobbed in the mud. I remembered my mother giggling and taking pictures of the funny scene instead of helping her granddaughter. Nora noticed my expression. "Mommy, are you okay?" I put the phone away and focused on her. "I'm perfect, sweetheart. Want to build a bigger sandcastle?" While Nora played, I found myself reflecting on the patterns in our family that had led to this moment. Daniela had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. When we were kids, she'd accidentally break my toys, then cry to our parents that I was being mean to her when I got upset. She'd copy my homework, then tell the teacher I'd cheated off her. She'd invite all my friends to parties and specifically exclude me, then act innocent when I felt hurt. Our parents always took her side. "Alyssa's just jealous," they'd say. "She needs to learn to be happy for her sister." When Daniela got into Stanford and I went to community college, the message was clear: she was the successful one, the one who mattered. Even after I'd worked my way through school, built a career, and created a stable, loving home for my family, Daniela was still the one they bragged about at church socials. "Daniela's husband just got another promotion," they'd say. "The boys are doing so well in their gifted program." They never mentioned that Quentin's promotions came with lateral moves because he couldn't get along with his colleagues. They never talked about how Easton and Riker had been suspended twice this year for bullying other kids. They never acknowledged that I'd been featured in a national rice eating magazine or that Nora had won the school's Kindness Award 3 years running. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that they'd stood by while my child was humiliated, and they'd found it entertaining. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniela. "Alyssa, please. I know you're angry, but punishing mom and dad isn't fair. They didn't do anything wrong." I stared at that text for a long moment. She honestly believed that. She genuinely thought our parents were innocent bystanders in all this. I typed back, "They laughed, Daniela. They laughed while Nora cried." Her response came quickly, "They were just uncomfortable. You know how they are with confrontation." They weren't uncomfortable. They were amused. "There's a difference. You're being ridiculous. It was just a silly childhood moment." "And that," I typed back, "is exactly why you're sitting in an airport right now." I blocked her number after that. Bryce found me an hour later, sitting on the beach watching Nora chase waves. He sat down beside me, his expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what happened," he said quietly. "And?" "I should have stopped it. I should have said something when Daniela pushed Nora. I should have stood up for both of you." I looked at him, seeing the genuine regret in his eyes. "Why didn't you?" He ran his hands through his hair. "Honestly? I was shocked. I couldn't believe she'd actually done it. And then everyone started laughing, and I guess I just froze. I didn't want to cause a scene. Nora was already the scene, Bryce. She was crying in the mud while people laughed at her. I know. And I failed her. I failed you both." He took my hand. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I squeezed his hand. "You didn't laugh. That means something." But I didn't defend her either. I let my discomfort override my responsibility as her father. We sat in silence for a while, watching Nora build an elaborate sand sculpture. She was humming to herself, completely absorbed in her creation. "She seems okay," Bryce observed. "She's resilient. But she shouldn't have to be. Not with family. What you did last night? Canceling everything. Do you think I went too far?" Bryce considered this. I think you protected our daughter in the only way you knew how. I think you showed her that her pain matters, that someone will fight for her when she can't fight for herself. Even if it means burning bridges with my family? Alyssa, they set those bridges on fire the moment they decided Nora's humiliation was entertainment. You just made sure they couldn't come back across. That afternoon, while Nora napped, I decided to check the voicemails I'd been ignoring. Most were from Daniela, ranging from angry to pleading to angry again. But there was one from Quentin that made my blood pressure spike. Alyssa, this is insane. His voice was tight with fury. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it stops now. My boys are traumatized by this experience. They're asking why their aunt hates them. Daniela is having a breakdown. Your parents are confused and scared. All because of what? A little childhood roughhousing? Childhood roughhousing. That's what he called it. Fix this, he continued. We're stuck here until tonight with nowhere to go and kids who don't understand what's happening. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. I'm going to tell everyone about this, about how you abandoned your family when they needed you most. I'm going to make sure Nora grows up knowing that her mother chose petty revenge over family. I saved that voicemail. Something told me I might need it later. There was also a message from my Aunt Lorraine, my mother's sister, who apparently had been called into the drama. Alyssa, sweetheart, your mother called me crying. She says there's been some kind of misunderstanding, and now they're stuck in Hawaii with no way to get home. I know there must be more to this story, but whatever happened, surely it can be worked out. These are your parents, honey. They love you and Nora so much. Aunt Lorraine had always been kind to me, so her message stung a little. But she hadn't been there. She hadn't seen what I'd seen. I called her back. Lorraine, it's Alyssa. Oh, sweetheart. I'm so glad you called. Your mother is beside herself. She doesn't understand what happened. I know she doesn't. And that's part of the problem. Can you help me understand? What could have happened that was so bad that you'd leave your family stranded? I took a deep breath and told her everything. I described the push, the cruel words, the laughter, the chanting. I told her about Nora's tears and her question about whether she was ugly. I told her about the years of Daniela's subtle cruelties and my parents' enabling. When I finished, there was a long silence. Oh, Alyssa, Lorraine said finally, her voice soft. Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. You believe me? Of course I believe you. And I'm ashamed that I didn't see this pattern before. Your mother calls me after every family gathering, and she always has stories about Daniela's spirited children and how you're too sensitive about Nora. I thought it was just normal family dynamics, but now? Now you see it differently? Now I see that my sister has been enabling abuse, and I've been enabling her. Lorraine's voice was firm. Alyssa, I want you to know that what you did was not petty revenge. It was justice. And it was protection. Thank you, I whispered, tears in my eyes. I needed to hear that. Your parents will figure out how to get home. Daniela and Quentin are adults who can handle their own problems. But Nora, she only has you to protect her from this kind of treatment. You did the right thing. After I hung up with Lorraine, I felt lighter somehow. At least one person in my extended family understood. At least one person saw what I'd seen. That evening, as we prepared for our final night in Hawaii, Nora asked if we could have a fancy dinner at the hotel restaurant. She put on her prettiest dress, the one she'd been saving for the luau that never happened, and Bryce wore his good shirt. This is the best vacation ever, Nora announced over her kids' menu chicken strips. Even with everything that happened? I asked gently. She considered this seriously. The sad part was sad. But the rest was so good. And you know what? I think I was brave in the mud. Brave? Yeah. I didn't hit anyone back, even though I was scared and sad. I just let you help me. That's brave, right? My heart swelled with pride. That's incredibly brave, sweetheart. And Daddy, she turned to Bryce, you carried me all the way back to the hotel, even though I was all muddy. That was nice. Bryce's eyes filled with tears. I love you, Nora Bear. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. You did protect me, she said simply. You carried me. Sometimes children see things so much more clearly than adults do. Later that night, after Nora was asleep, Bryce and I sat on our balcony with glasses of wine, watching the stars over the ocean. I keep thinking about what she said, Bryce murmured. About being brave. She is brave. She's always been brave. But she learned something in that moment. She learned that she can survive being hurt, that she can come through it and still be herself. That's a terrible thing for a 7-year-old to have to learn. But maybe it's a necessary thing. Maybe knowing she can survive cruelty will make her stronger when she faces it again. I thought about this. I don't want her to have to be strong against her own family, though. I want her to feel safe with the people who love her. Then we'll make sure she does. We'll build her a family of people who truly love her, even if it means leaving some blood relatives behind. My phone buzzed one more time. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Easton. Mom took my phone, but I wanted to say I'm sorry about Nora. We shouldn't have thrown mud. Can you tell her I'm sorry? I stared at the text for a long moment. Easton was only 8, the same age I was when Daniela started her campaign of subtle cruelties against me. He was young enough to learn different patterns, young enough to understand that what he'd done was wrong. I texted back, I'll tell her you apologized. That was brave of you to reach out. Are we in trouble? You're learning consequences. That's different from being in trouble. Mom says you hate us now. I don't hate you, Easton. I hate the choices that were made. But I love Nora more than I'm willing to tolerate those choices. I don't understand. You will when you're older. For now, just remember that hurting people smaller than you is never okay, even if the adults around you think it's funny. Okay. Tell Nora I think she's nice. I will. Easton was only 8, just like Nora would be in a few months. He was young enough to learn different patterns, young enough to understand that what he'd done was wrong if the adults in his life reinforced the right lessons. When I told Nora about Easton's message the next morning, her face lit up. He said I was nice? He did. And he apologized for throwing mud. That's good. I hope he learns to be nicer to other kids too. I hope so too, sweetheart. As we boarded our plane home on Saturday as originally scheduled, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I was sad that our family vacation had ended this way, but I was relieved that Nora and I would be going home to a life where she was valued and protected. The flight attendant noticed Nora's collection of shells and asked her about them. Nora launched into an enthusiastic explanation of each one, describing where she'd found it and what made it special. The attendant listened patiently, clearly charmed by Nora's passion. You know what? The attendant said. I think you're going to be a marine biologist someday. Nora beamed. That's exactly what I want to be. As I watched my daughter's face glow with confidence and excitement, I knew I'd made the right choice. This little girl, who had been told she belonged in the dirt, was dreaming of protecting ocean creatures and studying underwater worlds. She was resilient, kind, and brave, and she was going to change the world. And I was going to make sure she had every opportunity to do it, surrounded by people who saw her worth and celebrated her spirit. The people who had laughed at her pain were welcome to figure out their own way home. As we walked back to the hotel, Nora skipping ahead of me with her bucket of shells, I felt something I hadn't expected: peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about managing everyone else's feelings or keeping the peace in our family. I had chosen my daughter over everything else, and it felt right. My phone, which I'd turned back on that morning, had dozens of missed calls and voicemails. I deleted them all without listening. The flight home was peaceful. Nora colored in her coloring book and told me about all the fish she'd seen while snorkeling. She seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. It wasn't until we were back home, unpacking our suitcases, that Nora asked the question I'd been dreading. Mommy, why did Aunt Daniela push me? I sat down on her bed and pulled her close. Sometimes, sweetheart, people are hurting inside, and they do mean things because of that hurt. It doesn't make it okay, and it doesn't mean you deserved it. It just means that Aunt Daniela has some problems she needs to work on. Am I really ugly like she said? My heart broke all over again. Nora, look at me. I tilted her chin up so she was looking directly into my eyes. You are beautiful. You are kind. You are smart. You are funny. You are everything good in this world. And anyone who can't see that is missing out on knowing an amazing little girl. She hugged me tight. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby. More than all the stars in the sky. Over the next few weeks, the fallout continued. My parents called repeatedly, confused about what had happened and why I was being so dramatic. Quentin sent angry emails about the money they'd had to spend on last-minute flights and hotels. Daniela alternated between sending flowers with apology notes and leaving voicemails calling me vindictive and cruel. I responded to none of it. The turning point came 3 weeks later when Nora had a playdate with her best friend Maya. I was chatting with Maya's mom, Jolene, when she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. I'm so glad Nora seems to be feeling better about herself lately, Jolene said. Maya told me some kids at school have been calling her names about her hair and freckles. Kids can be so cruel. I felt that familiar surge of protective anger, but this time it was mixed with something else, pride. Because Nora was feeling better about herself. She was standing up straighter, speaking up more in class, making new friends. Protecting her from her family's cruelty has somehow made her stronger against other people's cruelty too. That night, as I was tucking Nora into bed, she said something that made everything worth it. Mommy, I'm glad we went to Hawaii, even though it was sad at the end. Why's that, sweetheart? Because I learned that you'll always protect me, no matter what. And that makes me feel brave. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You should feel brave, baby. You're the bravest person I know." As I write this, it's been 3 months since Hawaii. Daniela has tried to reach out several times, but I've maintained my boundaries. My parents have started to understand, slowly, that what happened wasn't just sibling drama but something much more serious. Quentin and the boys seem to have learned nothing, but that's not my problem anymore. Nora is thriving. She joined the school drama club and made several new friends. She talks about becoming a marine biologist because she loved seeing the fish in Hawaii. She still has moments of insecurity, all kids do, but she carries herself with a confidence that wasn't there before. Bryce and I are planning another trip to Hawaii next year. Just the 3 of us this time. Nora is already planning which shells she wants to collect and which fish she wants to see again. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did. If I think I went too far. If I feel bad about leaving my family stranded in Hawaii. The answer is no. Not for a single second. Because when your child is hurting, when someone deliberately traumatizes and humiliates them, you don't get to worry about being the bigger person. You don't get to prioritize keeping the peace over protecting your child. You fight for them. You show them they're worth fighting for. You teach them that they don't have to accept being treated poorly, even by family. Daniela taught Nora that day that some people will hurt you just because they can. But I taught her something more important, that there will always be someone in her corner, someone willing to stand up for her when it matters most. And if my sister or anyone else in my family has a problem with that, they can book their own trips to Hawaii and figure it out themselves. My only responsibility is to the little girl with the curly red hair and the heart full of wonder who calls me Mom. And I'll be damned if I ever let anyone make her feel like she belongs in the dirt again. Nora deserves a family who celebrates her, not one that tears her down for entertainment. And if that means it's just the 3 of us from now on, then that's exactly what it means. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's choosing to protect what matters most and letting the people who hurt you figure out their own consequences. They're still calling sometimes. They're still sending emails and flowers and apologies. But my answer remains the same, silence. Because Nora is worth more than their empty apologies, and she's definitely worth more than their toxic presence in our lives. The little girl who asked me if she was ugly is now the confident child who wants to study marine biology and protect the ocean's creatures. She learned that she's worth protecting, and that lesson is worth more than any family relationship built on accepting abuse. That's my story. That's my choice. And I'd make it again in a heartbeat.